We're live. So, welcome to Kortex Labs, the podcast where innovation meets conversation. I'm your host, Matthew Smith, the co-founder of Kortex Labs, an AI development company at the forefront of cutting-edge technology. Today, we're joined by Aman Ibrahim, correct?
Yeah.
Co-founder of DeepTrustAI, a leading force in AI-driven cybersecurity, with a background in computer science from Duke University and a passion for technology. Aman's entrepreneur journey is as inspiring as it is groundbreaking. Known for his great spirit and aura, Aman brings a positive outlook on life to everything he does. So join us today as we explore his insights, experiences, and the cutting-edge innovation shaping the future of cybersecurity. Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you welcoming me warmly. I want to point out my initials actually spell AI. So
Yeah. Oh,
so it's Aman Ibrahim AI.
okay.
I really appreciate you bringing me on. I'm more than happy to tell everyone what I've been building, where we kind of see the future going in this space. Essentially, what we're building now has been powered by and pushed by the advent of generative AI that happened over the past year. But yeah, thank you for welcoming me warm. I'm looking forward to this.
Anytime, man. It's like you're born to do this.
No. It's it could mean anything. It could be artificial intelligence. An idiot. The initials could be anything.
Yeah.
It just depends on how I utilize it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Thanks for hopping on. Where are you calling from today?
San Francisco, specifically Potrero Hill. I apparently live across the street where they filmed a lot of Ant-Man videos, and then 2 blocks away, Ant-Man footage from the movie, and 2 blocks away from where the author of Dune wrote the books, back in the 1960s. Yeah. I'm on 18th in Missouri, so 19th and Texas, which is like another block away, is where he resided, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Have you seen Dune or the second one yet?
I did. I have some opinions on it, but
Yeah.
I don't I think cinematically beautiful movie. The story and some of the characters kind of pushed me the wrong way.
I can see that.
Yeah. That could be a whole different discussion about like white savior complex and like stereotyping, group of people.
Yeah.
But it did bring about funny memes. Lisan al-Ghaib.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw a funny one today where it was like a picture of Timothy Chalamet turning on a car, and then it zooms out and it's a Nissan driving in the desert, and then it's the guy who's like Nissan al-Qaim. I thought that was hilarious. Puns killed me, man.
How funny. But yeah, before we'll say that for another.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, let's dive into it, man. Can you share a bit about your background and what initially sparked your interest in technology and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been sort of always interested in problem solving, and I think that's what entrepreneurship really is. It's finding a problem to solve, helping people, remove a problem from their life, right? And I could even say it started from even early days into middle school, where I'd have an ability that people didn't have, and then I'd help them with it. So I remember being the only one who knew how to burn discs. So if people wanted to watch a movie and they didn't want to spend $1 at Redbox or something, they wanted to keep the movie, or they wanted to burn a computer game like Portal, Half-Life, or whatever. I'd burn it onto some discs. I will say I undersold it, so I'd always like to sell it to them for either $1 or a bag of cookies or something like that. So I started then valuing my product as something I had to learn to do. And then throughout high school and college, I always like had side projects where I'd program, would involve programming or anything like that. Yeah, I mean, it's just something I've always been really interested in. During college when I was at Duke, I had like 40 different side projects. Some of those projects became things I got like adopted into the IT department. Other things I kind of made them into like startups on campus. Where I had one project where it was like an app for Duke basketball fans, where when they were tenting, we just scheduled the tent. Like there's this tradition where Duke basketball students would sleep out in tents months before Duke versus UNC. And there's like rules to it. Yeah, yeah, we're obsessed. But it was also like it's also something that you'd only get to do as a Duke student. So like people who were okay with like sleeping in 20-degree weather
Yeah.
for a basketball game. But yeah, people like so there was rules to it. Like you needed to schedule a tent, and people have to always be in the tent at specific times. And people were using like pen and paper, spreadsheets to somehow get like 10 people's busy schedules and to like figure out who would be at the tent at certain times.
This is
So I
serious.
essentially built an app. Yeah, it was serious. Yeah. But I built an app that like allowed people to just like submit their availabilities and then like in seconds you'd have your whole schedule filled out. Everyone had like a fair amount of times in the tent. And take into account like who'd be sleeping in what days because you'd have to sleep in the tent and they'd randomly check in the middle of the night too. So yeah, so this app got some traction. I ended up working with Duke basketball. I got to go to Coach K's office a couple times. Worked directly with actually Coach K's family who were involved with like Duke basketball, and they even promoted our app and stuff. I raised like grant money, hired students on campus. It was like a startup on campus, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Which one?
And then
What side products was that?
that was a side project. That started off as a side project, and then it just spun into like a whole thing. And then my whole junior and senior year, I was like quite dedicated to it. And then after college, my team we were considering it like spinning it out into like a scheduling tool for like wage workers because I worked at like wage based jobs at Jersey Mike's, Best Buy, and like our manager would do this stuff by hand. He'd text us, when are you available this week? Like everything was done by hand. I feel like it doesn't make sense to do it that way.
Yeah.
And we did it. We spun it out for like a very short period of time. But during that short period of time, we had an amazing company name. It was Shifty, and the tagline was "It's time to give a shift." And we applied to an accelerator or two. Yeah, but everyone had their careers to start, including myself. I was going to cruise, so that didn't really fully spin out as like we thought it could. Yeah. I mean, even when I was working at Cruise, even part time, a close childhood friend of mine, me and him, we moved out to LA. That's where I met you. I met you out in LA. Remember Ahmed? He used to be my co-founder. We started something else part time. So yeah, even if I had a full time job, I had an itch to work on something else too, like something that I could fully build from the ground up. And this time around, this is my third rodeo, and this time I was like, you know what, I need a. With the previous startup, we were kind of like half-assing it, where you had a full-time job and then the side thing. And I was like, next time I do something, I can't half-ass it. I have to full-ass it. Like both cheeks, they got to be fully committed
into it.
Yeah, exactly. And that was like the motivation behind me, like leaving Cruise. And I was like, you know what, maybe it's time for me to like fully dedicate myself to a project that I really care about. And that basically takes you to Deep Trust.
And it improves to be fruitful, right? When you go all in, man, it really
exactly.
But you had your first couple runs with Shifty, right? Shifty. So do you think that first experience kind of shaped exactly where you are now with Deep Trust?
Yeah, so it got a lot of the founder mistakes out of me, especially Shifty. It was called GTHC when we were at Duke. GTHC is like an acronym we use for Carolina that says "Go to Hell, Carolina." But then we twisted it into something like a little naive, like Game Tenting Help Center. Oh, GTHC also happens to be this crude thing we say, but with that project, we were all engineers mostly, and we were overly focused on like product development. Where I had 2 winter breaks where I'd spend the entire winter break heads down just doing that project all day and night. And the problem with that was I was building features and products to that project that I didn't confirm with the customer, didn't talk to the customer about their pain points. I just assumed what they need and then I just built it, right? And when you're building a company or a business, that isn't effective at all, because what happens if you spend all that time, even money, and then you're risking yourself for customers not needing what you built after all the time that you spent into it. So that was very much a very, very important thing to learn. And then the second rodeo, I actually decided to not write any code at all, where we were like, we need to understand the business fully, understand how we're going to distribute this. Because what we built back then was we saw COVID caused travel to drop. We saw touring was something that everyone loved, but it was very inaccessible. So we were like, let's make digital tours. So we first tried talking to museums, see if they'd be willing to partner, institutions, until it led us all the way to content creators. And honestly, we felt like a very strong potential distribution medium through like content creators, or it'd be like a master class, but for travel. And honestly, it just didn't work out for the reason that we weren't putting enough time into it, and I honestly wanted to move on and either fully focus on cruise or, fully focus on something else that I'd want to do. So that opportunity like taught me about, okay, understanding distribution. And then now this third time around, I've taken those like learnings and it's helped me with Deep Trust for sure.
Yeah. You were on both sides of the spectrum, both extremes. Right?
Exactly.
So it's good that you kind of find that middle ground.
Exactly.
What led you to the founding of DeepTrustAI, and what inspired the focus of AI-driven cybersecurity?
Yeah, so just my background includes like NLP and doing research work while I was at Duke, building out projects in like research labs around NLP and recommendation systems and detection models. So I was always like a spectator of at least the NLP space. And then that naturally transitioned into generative AI. And a year ago, while I was still at Cruise, seeing all these things, appear, the technology was always, of course, going to get better. But the real key thing that I noticed was how accessible it became. Everyone had access to this technology that could generate reality. And for me, what I saw was a Pandora's box being opened. Essentially, where we're heading to an era where people can't trust anything they see or hear digitally.
Exactly.
So basically, this is what happened. We see a new technology appear, aggravating a new problem, mistrust in digital content, where it creates a new market entirely, digital trust, which isn't just a problem needing to be solved in the cybersecurity space, but it's also in digital forensics, IP and copyright, misinformation, trust and safety, and the list goes on and on and on. So in fact, the Deep Trust is serving a new market that we call digital trust, where we believe there needs to be a trust layer across the entire internet between a content provider and a content consumer. The same way we have identity authentication, we now need content authentication. How can you trust what you're hearing and seeing? And the way we've gone about doing it first is through deepfake detection, in particular with voice. So that's how we came about, or how I came about, ideating and realizing that this was a problem that needs solving.
Yeah, I was doing some research on my own, and I'm like surprised by these numbers. So let's see, we got over 353 million people were impacted by data breaches in 2023 alone, right?
Yeah.
And there were an estimated 2,365 cyber attacks in 2023. So yeah, man, cybersecurity is very important, right? And being able to trust what we're reading, being able to trust what we're listening to, what we're watching, is extremely important. So
yeah, and what aggravates those numbers for breaching? It kind of like kicked off in 2018 with the introduction of ransomware, where before 2018, before say the introduction of blockchain to malicious attacks, people would only really breach businesses or individual with extremely private data that they'd be willing to pay money for. But now, thanks to like blockchain, and you can anonymize ransom money, you can basically block any businesses or any individual away from their computers or servers or any sort of technology that they are reliant on, and you can make money off of that by ransoming them. Excuse me.
Yeah,
so that's where that comes from. And one of the key ways that these malicious actors breach is through social engineering. So they basically either trick an individual into thinking they're someone else, trick them into clicking a link. Some of the most dangerous multinational attacks like the Chinese panda attack that happened a few years ago, all started with social engineering. And when it comes to cybersecurity, it's very clear deepfakes are just going to be an amazing tool for malicious actors to social engineer people.
Yeah.
There's never been a way to be able to imitate someone so well up until now. We've already seen examples from voice phishing attacks at companies like Retool, MGM. MGM like lost $100 million in revenue, plus probably a ransom that they had to pay, and then now all the legal situations that they're dealing with after. And of course, we know that other thing that happened recently, the Hong Kong multinational firm that wired 25 million. That's actually not a new story either. There's exactly word for word that story happened in Dubai with another accountant thinking she was talking to his chief executive, and it turned out to be a scammer. So right now it's not whether or not they can do it. It's more so how many of these people are aware that this technology exists and they're utilizing it. And as time goes by and as more headlines appear, more and more people will be aware of it, both the victims and the people who enact these breaches. So yeah, the assumption and the rate that it's growing at is like breaches in general is expected to just continuously go up, and I don't see why generative AI won't make that hockey stick even more aggressive. So yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the thing with security, cybersecurity, is it's always a cat and mouse game. So you can always fill in a gap, but then these malicious actors will find another way to work around it, and it's a nonstop sort of battle, and it's a necessary one. Just because the fight never stopped doesn't mean you should stop fighting. So yeah. Yeah, that's a good question because even though we provide detection, we actually think the immediate way to prevent this is through education. It won't solve the problem entirely, but some of the ways that we immediately have done it is by content. I've posted, both video and blog content on not only the things that we're building, but demoing like how someone could do things such as like clone a voice. I uploaded a video where I took a friend just singing the ABCs, took that 30-second clip, and then I had a text to speech clone of his voice. And that just emphasized because like yes, we're like in the AI space, so it like seems so obvious that this is possible, but then if you talk to like a regular person, they don't realize this stuff is going on. And that's what happens when you kind of get stuck in the bubble. You don't realize you can already help people immediately by just exposing them that this technology exists. And I think the fastest way it'll probably get to people's head is when we start seeing more and more headlines in the news. We have an election cycle coming up. I can't see why that wouldn't be ways for people to suddenly aggressively become more aware. And then other ways we've like helped people become more aware is we've partnered with security breaching businesses. So there's like red team business. There's a business in cybersecurity called red teaming, where they simulate breaches, and then what it does is like it shows like the CISO or the security teams like where their vulnerabilities are, and then they supply training to them. And we recently announced a partnership with a business called Breacher AI, and something interesting they found was they typically do email and SMS phishing, where you get an email saying, "Oh, I'm your CEO. Click this link, join this meeting." Da da da. And they see less than a 1% success rate, where people will click the link and then get breached. Again, it's a simulation. But then they converted to like voice phishing, and they wanted to see like what kind of you know level of breach they could get through that medium. Basically say they'd imitate a CEO, send a voice clip or something like that. And they've achieved 70% breaching rate, which is crazy. Yeah, yeah. So you're talking about a typical, breach attack would be like a 1% situation where 1 out of 100. Now you're talking about 70 out of 100 would possibly, fall for this trick, you know? So for them, yeah, their business is to do these simulations and then give training. And we're partnering with them because they do the training, but then we also will provide like our detections opportunity as like a nice benefit for those same. It, Exactly. And then I mean like the goal here is like they become aware of like where their gaps are and then they come to us to help them fill in those gaps. So that's like one way we're routing this business where that partnership would basically get us intros to these businesses because you basically convince them the best way possible that they need us to help them solve that problem. Um, yeah, for when it comes to misinformation or content platforms, we actually found that they aren't motivated to solve this problem. Like when you're talking about misinformation, yeah, I mean think about it. Like if you're talking about the business of like Twitter or Facebook, their business is traction, audience, and getting large traffic to their website. Um, Detecting misinformation doesn't drive it or dissuade it. Um, in fact, if anything, if something becomes viral and it is maybe a misinformation post, then it makes them money. So, why would they do anything against it? It seems like more so if they do anything about misinformation, it's more so like a need to do from like a public standpoint, like public view standpoint. If we talk about like Facebook's Cambridge Analytica situation, ever since then they had to be on top of like misinformation because if they don't do anything about it, then it looks bad for them legally. I mean, how many times is Mark Zuckerberg getting called up to the Supreme Court? And if they do something about it, then they're just throwing money into basically as a business into a tar pit that isn't really giving them returns revenue wise. So yeah, that's not necessarily in our immediate interest to work with content platforms for the misinformation aspect of things, or what do you call it? Uh, Content management. That could be really useful as a consumer tool, but we've seen a lot of other business profiles that probably have a higher pain point, and being an early startup, the focus should be more so who has the higher pain point and who's willing to pay to solve that pain point. So we found places that we found other profiles that fit better better needs at this stage. Yeah. What is TCPA? Uh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. We're actually in the conversations with some like telecommunication businesses where I think it's essentially that sort of solution. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so in the long term, like our grand vision is that we build content authentication for every type of content, content agnostic, industry agnostic. And the way we decided to go about doing that is first starting with audio. And the vision is we try to take hold of that audio market because in our opinion and our thesis has always been that voice would be the immediate vector of deception, and we've been seeing that recently. And the reason why is it takes less time to get to a threshold of developing the tech to like build voice clones that can like trick people, and then on top of that, the accessibility is already there. Whereas when you're talking about images and videos, that technology, generative images, still has a lot of development to go. I mean, Fluoro was just announced like 2 3 weeks ago. It's still not accessible for people. So yeah, and on top of that too, audio is the rate limiter anyways for these videos. Like if you see generative video, it probably will have to have generative audio alongside it. So we could still technically capture that market as well. So like in the immediate term, we look to like expand our usefulness as being the source of trust for what you hear, and that goes in multiple industries where you're talking about digital forensics to security, trust and safety, IP and copyright, and essentially we hope to build a platform, a suite of tools that can allow people to authenticate what they're hearing, you know? And we actually believe defect detection is not the whole solution. It's actually one tool in the full toolbox. I believe in building something that is both proactive and reactive. So detection is a very reactive solution. But then proactive would be like provenance and watermarking and signaturing audio. So this would be great for like derivative licensing content, so people can actually get, their rights for the stuff that they build, or even being able to preemptively verify that someone is who they are by signing content from the moment it comes out of the hardware or through an editing software. So you can like truly know like the actual location that this content is coming from. That'd be a very proactive solution. And I really think the end game would be full, complete provenance across any sort of content medium, whether you're talking about hardware, whether you're talking about models that produce content or generate content, or even content providers that take in that content. They need to check those signatures. And then it could give you not only like a verification if this is coming from who it thinks you think it comes from, but it can even give you like a history list. So like if you're like looking at an image or listening to an audio on social media, you can know that okay, this originally came from Universal, but it was sampled by this guy and then this guy, and now it's on this audio file here. And it'll give you like full trust in what you're seeing and hearing. And our belief of what trust is not this is real or not. The real way you get trust is through, helping people truly understand what they're looking at. You don't have to tell them what's true or not. Explaining to them what they're seeing is how you give people trust. So that's basically some part of the vision and where we're hoping to go. So building tools alongside deepfake detection with the goal of helping people trust what they hear and eventually trust what they see. Yeah. 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 I mean, like, listen, if every person came with a Carfax, a history, and you knew where they are coming from with, someone that you trust, then, even your relationships could, could, could have stronger trust, It's the problem with trust is there's that missing gap, fill in the gap. Yeah, exactly. We're trying to fill in the gap. That's why I like to call it the trust layer, you know? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So when it comes to like generative AI, let's talk about the immediate thing that's taking up the headlines is LLMs. There's been a lot of like productive use cases of it where, people accelerate themselves to get work done, which will be amazing. But there's also that fear of people being able to use it to accelerate themselves to do malicious work as well too. So I know there's a growing concern about how people might use LLMs to produce more phishing tools or things like that. And the solution there might not even be detection necessarily because it's just essentially these malicious actors like just 10xing their output because they don't have to either write out the emails or find the people themselves. Um, but then some trends that we've been seeing is in our space directly where uh, we've spoken to some people that work alongside banks or work within banks, and they're seeing because they do a lot of their business over the phone, more and increasing trends of people utilizing the current version of voice clones to mimic someone else and try to get access or breach a bank or any sort of business. I mean, we've seen headlines already for it, and I think the testing ground has started at the individual level, where the FTC recently mentioned that they've reported $3 billion lost by Americans in imitation scams. So like maybe someone imitating to be someone else calling on the phone, or maybe someone imitating Oprah and telling them, "Hey, sign up for this government check, fill in your social security number." I mean, this has happened to my mom and my co-founder. His grandfather got a call from him, and we hear this story all the time. And the issue with the report, and FTC mentions this as well too, just like most reports that they do for scams, they believe that's actually an underestimation because of how often people get scammed and don't report it, just because it's like an embarrassing experience. But like at this stage, we see like the individual being like the testing ground. And if you're gonna hurt individuals like this, why can't you hit businesses like this? So we've seen it already taken over the individual space for people getting individually scammed, and I don't see why in the coming months, and we've been seeing it in the last few weeks, more and more businesses getting impacted by this. I think there was a some sub research report from the beginning of 2023 saying that there was like a 600% increase of deepfake attacks. And that's at the beginning of 2023, before a lot of this. Like that's essentially ancient time in terms of generative AI. So we're seeing more and more of these attacks happen. And I honestly sometimes say it's like a good time to be a villain right now. Like think about I told you about that 70% breach rate. You can technically build a tool where you have a real-time text to speech, so it transcribes what someone says. Then you can have an LLM sit there and then write up a response. And then you can have a voice clone that sits on top of it. So in real time, you think you're talking to a real person with barely any pausing. It's real time and it sounds like someone else. So now I think when you try to imitate someone else through recording something that used to be like stuck to certain responses, now you can say anything as long as you've maybe prompted the LLM to like get that personality right. And then you don't have to call it yourself. You could just set up like a launch of 100 agents. And remember, I told you 70%. You only need to call like 100 people. You only need one breach to actually work. But with the 70%, rate, you'll get way more than one. So right now, your returns are amazing. You build a super cheap tool that can allow you to like call 100 people all at once, pretending to say be a CEO. And then you just need to hope and see that one person falls for it, gives you some information that they weren't supposed to. And then now you've breached the business's system. And I feel like this is what we're going to be seeing in a few months. I don't see any reason why a malicious person wouldn't do this. It's so easy to do. Hopefully, yeah. So businesses are totally unprepared for this. And I'll be honest, like even educating won't be enough because especially as humans, when you're like talking to someone when you get scammed, it's usually someone you don't know. It's a Nigerian prince or anything like that. But when it's someone you recognize, someone you see, someone you know, why would you doubt that? Like that's just in your mind. Like if I see it, I believe it. If I hear it, I believe it. So that's actually Matthew on the other side of the phone. That's actually Aman on the other side of the phone. But then, of course, uh, one after another, it is what it is. Yeah. So, yeah. 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 So as a startup, we are pre-product market fit. So the goal for the API access form is we get to see like what type of customers need our access to our API. And then once they explain to us our use case, we take note of it, and then we just give them the access to the API. And it's very easy to use. You have an audio file, you submit it to via our API. We launch a job which analyzes the speech within it, and then you get a score back. So the product is very simple right now. And I did that purposely because there's still a lot of learning to do. We're building an emerging tech, an emerging threat, and we need to like truly understand who our hell yes customers are. So what we do is we built a super horizontal layer, and then we want to eventually like own a vertical, and we do that through like having these conversations with customers, understanding what they're using our tech for, see how they use it, understand their pain points and their need, and then basically our business would be a T shape. We'd have like an API for anyone to access, so we can continuously serve as many people as possible. But then the people that need it the most will try to own those verticals because it'll be very beneficial for like a startup to own a vertical. Uh, yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. Ah, I appreciate that. There's also another vertical that we are gaining like conviction for, which is like the rights holder space. So, when you heard first saw voice clones, can you like a year ago, what was that first example you remember? Yeah, yeah. But like something that went mainstream that was good. It popped up on social media. There's Trump. Yeah. Yeah, but also the one I was like leaning in towards was the Heart in My Sleeves. Drake AI, The Weeknd. Oh, you don't know this? You never heard about this? No way. Yeah, that's what I'm leaning more towards too. Yeah, yeah. And that was not Drake singing that. That was a voice clone. So everyone was like, "Oh, this sounds like Drake." And obviously myself and record labels were like, "Oh, this sounds like Drake," you know? So these people who own these right holders, like copyright holders, IP owners, they see other people benefiting off of their IP and they're getting no share of that. And then also on top of that too, now that you have access to be able to say anything with another person's voice, what happens when your business is your brand and then someone goes out there and misuses your likeness? I mean, you're talking about, for example, a politician is an easy example. I mean, imagine we just, we somehow get, Trump on a leaked audio saying something horrendous. I mean, that would never happen, right? But you understand, like, where that would leak, and then people wouldn't know if it was real or not, and then, the damage that could do. If you're talking about CEO, you get him to say, like, let's say Elon Musk, where you get him to say, oh, actually, all of our Teslas have this flaw. People don't know about it yet. And then you post it on social media, and then that you do that to drop their stock. You know, that's catastrophic for the stakeholders. And then we're talking about, say, Drake or some other high profile individual, someone try to ruin their reputation with, some horrendous video or clip of them on social media, and then boom. And then even the individual level, like one of the early use cases of deepfakes was for revenge porn. So like they'd like take someone's face, put it on something else. Now, why can't you do that with someone's voice? You could like we actually have a case study where a student had their voice cloned and they were studying to be a priest. So they made them say some horrendous things. They came to us. We did like a digital forensics lab report. But regardless, we're going to see more and more like because the question is like, why wouldn't this happen? I mean, 10 years ago, 2016, 10 years ago, we were in an election cycle, and what was the major talking point? It was fake news, misinformation, and then how you know uh, far apart the political channels were. The left was hated the right hated the left. They would say anything they can to like ruin each other. So when we're in that sort of environment, why wouldn't an individual utilize technology to damage someone they don't care about? So that's a space that we see you know as a very high pain point. I mean, another way to sort of explain it is like the value we can add to like these rights holders. Like we go to them and say, when someone steals your car and does a crime with it, you get amended for it. People will be like, oh, they used your car in a bank robbery. That's not your fault. You don't get charged. When someone steals your content, like maybe it's a music clip or a movie clip, and they use it for their own benefit, you're able to claim royalties off of it and get the money that you deserve. If someone tries to make use of your own IP. But now the same thing is happening with your voice, but no one's doing anything to solve those two problems. You know, if someone uses your voice in a heinous way, what is there to do to protect you? There really isn't anything. If someone steals your voice and utilizes it to make a lot of money, how do you protect yourself? You know, so that's another vertical that it has an immediate strong need as well too, and we've been working in that space as well. Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, if you go to TikTok right now and you scroll, you'll just see endless stuff. So yeah, 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 and it just tells you how big this space is. Like that's why I decided it's not a cybersecurity problem only. It's a new market. It's literally everything you see in here needs a layer of trust. You could talk about digital forensics, the court of law. You can talk about trust and safety within a business. You can talk about misinformation. Literally anything you see are here. Streaming a video, streaming music. What are you doing to like help you trust that you're actually seeing or hearing what you think you see or hear? Yeah. 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 Um, as someone who's never achieved product market fit, what I can say is always try to make sure what you're building is solving people's problems. And you're more obsessed about the problem you're solving than the technology you're building. I think that's the key way to success because like I told you before, I was head down building a product. I honestly was doing it because I had fun, spinning up that website, making those features. And didn't really consider like talking to people and understanding what their problems were before building everything. And it ended up being honestly a waste in hindsight. I mean, I learned a little bit from it, and that's useful. You always gotta, sometimes you need to touch the fire to know you shouldn't touch the fire. But I think entrepreneurs should always keep in mind, like, who are you really serving at the end of the day? And make sure you're actually solving and giving them a solution to their problems. And the best way you can honestly do that is through conversation. Uh, talk, and be obsessed with those customers and be level with them and try to understand what their day to day life is. And I think one of the best ways to do that and learn how to do that is reading a book called The Mom Test. It goes through, yeah, it goes through how to talk to a customer to really understand like what their problem really is, rather than getting them to confirm what you want them to confirm. And the name of the book comes from this. Like, if you ever built something cool and then you go to your mom and you show it to her, and then you ask her the question you should never ask, would you buy this? Your mom, being the loving person she is and being very kind, should be like, yeah, yeah. But the reality is, when you do this, say with a customer or anyone else, and the inclination for people is just to be nice to you, right? When the time comes around for them to maybe buy something or anything like that, it turns out that it truly isn't the case. So the best thing to always do is just figure out what problems they already have and what they're willing to pay to make it go away. And the mom test goes into the details on like what should your focus be when you talk to someone, when you build something, and how you should go about doing it. And it's really great. It's a 100-page book, and then once you read it once, they even give you like a shorthand book at the end, like a review thing to like kind of remind yourself before you go into a call or something like that. So yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, exactly, exactly. Yeah. A final message. Um, oh, that's a good question. I maybe might not be inspirational, but I think, I think for us, and because our motivation is to protect human authenticity, I think no matter what we're seeing with this generative AI space, I think there's always no, I don't think there should ever be a concern because something about being human is irreplaceable. Like despite these, you know, generative AI software engineers, designers, there's always something about being human that is unique that a machine will never be able to replicate. And that's why for us, we are looking to find that gap to help you know what is humanly authentic. And, you know, that's maybe something you can look into yourself and be proud of. You know, at the end of the day, generative AI can't truly be you. Yeah. So, uh, yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. And then I guess a good way you could like keep up with us is through Twitter. Um, our Twitter handle is DeepTrustAI. So one word, DeepTrustAI. And myself is my name, Aman M Ibra. So AMANMIBRA. And then probably pops up on the video. I don't know. But yeah. Thank you for inviting me. Let me know, man. Yeah, yeah. No, coffee for sure. San Francisco is definitely a coffee city. Pete's and Phil's are from San Francisco. There's a couple other. I will. One thing, I'm from the East Coast. One thing I'll give props to on the West Coast is they're very coffee centric. LA, San Francisco, Seattle, I feel like they're pretty strong coffee hubs. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Hey, Noor. Yeah. Oh, wait, is that Jaffa Coffee Roasters? No way. Another San Francisco-based coffee business. I just was introducing Jaffa Coffee Roasters to another friend of mine who's from Jaffa. So yeah, that's pretty cool, man. I didn't know you had a bag. I need to get myself some too. I've been meaning to go to the pop-ups and stuff. I'm actually supposed to see Noor today, actually. I need to hit him up for iftar. We're gonna break our fast today. It's a good coincidence. Thank you, everyone. That's cool. This is pretty cool. I really like this Riverside thing. Oh shoot.